Did you know you can rewrite your story? It's true. I've done it 100 times. I'm Kath Telford. I am a mum to 2 grown men. I'm a spirituality life coach and intuitive, and I also teach radical forgiveness. In my life, I've experienced trauma, loss, and insurmountable grief at times. I've worked through an eating disorder, sexual assault, and physical and mental abuse. But I'm still standing, and I'm happier and stronger than ever. My mission with this podcast is to create a community, a safe space where you can feel seen, heard, and above all else, loved. At the end of each episode, I will ask you a question and offer you a call to action. I will also tell you how you can get involved and share your stories. You'll be invited to ask me questions and make suggestions on what you want to hear. I will be having some incredible guests along the way, some amazing human beings that have overcome diversity in their life. They will share with you their stories and how they got to where they are now. We will cover everything from birth to death and the big dash in between, and all things spiritual and woo-woo, my favourite topic. This ride may get rough at times, so buckle up and let's go. Hello, my darling souls. How is everybody today? Welcome to yet another episode of You Can Rewrite Your Story. I've had an interesting week trying to work out how to continue telling you my story or stories. I'm going to say stories because there's a lot. There's a lot. And I sometimes question myself whether you'll all think I'm slightly bonkers. I've been through so much and somehow have come out the other side with a sense of humour and a sense of peace, whatever that looks like. So I wanted to go back to what I was talking about in episode 9 about my path to destruction and my belief system that I had around me and the men that I attracted into my life, the situations that I attracted into my life. Following the breakup of that 2-year relationship, I was, to say the least, very lost. I had lost all sense of where my life was meant to go. Because as I've said, I had a plan. I had this plan. I was going to, leave school, get a job, meet the man of my dreams, get married, have babies, and live happily ever after, because that's what everyone did. Isn't that what we were meant to do? Isn't that how it meant to work? I was raised on The Sound of Music and High Society and, 7 Brides for 7 Brothers and all these fantastical old movies that had such wonderful, blissful, happy endings. And in some of them, the girls could be slightly bonkers, but the men just seemed to love that. And I didn't have a real sense of who I was in this world. I didn't have a real sense of who I was meant to be. I believed life was meant to be a certain way because that's what had happened around me and that's what I'd seen and that's what I'd watched on TV. And my sisters had gotten married and my brothers had gotten married and all the people I was hanging around with at 18, 19 years of age who were a couple of years older than me had all gone off and got married and having babies, and that wasn't happening for me. And I was really lost, so lost. So I'll take you back in time to when I was about 14 or 15. And I used to go away with my eldest brother a few times a year. We'd go up and stay with, we used to call them cousins, but they weren't technically cousins. They were kids that my older brothers and sisters had grown up with, or a particular guy that my brothers and sisters had grown up with, who lived up in the country. And I used to go up with my brother in school holidays and stay with this family out on their farm. My brother would work out on the farm with Noel. The guy's name was Noel. And I would hang out with his kids, who he had an oldest daughter who was a little bit older than me. And Deb and I got along like a house on fire. And I had sort of created a whole other life there. So when I say that, what I mean is I never felt like I really fit in with the friends that I went to school with, even though I've got some of them are still incredible, beautiful, lifelong friends now. But I always felt that I didn't fit in. I didn't feel like I fit in with my family. I didn't feel like I fit in with the kids around me, the people that I hung around with at school. I joined a youth group that was on the other side of the city that my mum and dad used to take me to. So I had all these different lives going on. And, you know, when I look back now, I think that served me in a way, because I could be what I was, how do I say it? I could be somebody different. And nobody ever really got to see all of me, because at some level I felt that I was damaged, or not good enough, or it sounds so mediocre compared to what I'm feeling while I'm saying it. But I just felt, you know, I could spend so much time with this group in Ivanhoe at the youth group, and I could be one person, and then with my school friends, I could be another person. And I tended to not really let people get to know the real me. There were a few people that I felt knew me that are still in my life all these years later. But these trips to the country was another version of myself that I could be, where I felt free. These friends in the country were, once again, different types of people. They didn't know the people I knew at school. They didn't know anybody else that I knew. So I could be another version of me. I could be the daggy version. I could be the whatever I wanted to be up there. And I didn't have to stay there, you know, like I was only there a week at a time or whatever. So I could be this person, this creation. It sounds completely bonkers. And at the time, I probably didn't realize that that's what was going on for me. But as I've gotten older and realized that I quite often did that throughout my life, I had different groups of friends that I felt that I could be one person with, and another group of friends that I felt I could be another version of me with, because I never felt that the whole of me, all of me, was good enough, or that it was safe to be all of me with any one person, because that person mightn't like all of me. Yeah. Anyway, so back to my country visits. In Melbourne, where I grew up, I used to go ice skating, and I had met a guy at ice skating who was a mate. We became really good mates, and I had told him I used to go up to the country, to this little country town, Kyabram, And he was like, oh, my God, I know this guy up there and we've known each other for years. And I think they'd met through camping or something when they were little or whatever. You should look him up when you're up there next. And so I'd gone up for one lot of school holidays, and my school always finished a week or so before other schools. I was at a private school, I suppose it was. And my country cousins, in inverted commas, my country cousins went to public school. So they always finished school later than I did. And the family that I stayed with got permission for me to be able to go to school with the eldest daughter for the last week of school holidays, so that, my school holidays, last week of her schooling, so that I wasn't bored sitting at home with the grown-ups who were out milking cows. And I had a ball. It was leading up to Christmas. It was, there was the school play going to be on, and, they had class discos and all sorts of stuff. They were doing all sorts of activities, and I had a ball, absolute ball. And I was the out-of-town cousin, so it was a novelty. And, people wanted to know about me, and it was fun. It was fun. I was somebody for a week. I felt like I was somebody for a week. But in the meantime, I had met this guy that the friend had told me about, and it was the cutest little connection, because it was we kind of got a big crush on each other really quickly. And it was like first love stuff, not the first love in that sense of the word, but first love, like first, he looked at me, I looked at him, everything was mushy and beautiful, and we held hands, and I got to hang out with him for a couple of days at the school while they were getting ready for this play, which he had a main role in this play. And I was able to be, backstage, helping him get ready for the show. Anyway, I digress. It was lots of fun, and it was real mushy kid love. Like, we were just bonkers about each other. But it never progressed past, a quick peck or holding hands. But, I would see him on school holidays when I'd go up to visit. And that didn't go on for a terribly long time, but we used to ring each other and write letters and everything in between. Then life went on, and we lost touch, as you do as you start getting older. I got to the age where I was starting to date. He was a couple of years older, so he was seriously dating. He drove, and he'd met a local girl, and they were going to get married, but we'd still sort of kept in touch at a distance. And when I didn't speak to him directly, I would find out information through our mutual friends in the town. Anyway, fast forward a few years, and I had come out of this horrendous 2-year relationship, and as I've said, I was really lost and didn't quite know where I was meant to be. I'm getting emotional when I'm thinking about this, because it was a really tough time. Probably at the time I didn't realise it was such a tough time because I was in it. But in hindsight, I know that it was a really confusing time for me. And I went on a bit of a mission to find JB. I'm going to call him JB, Johnny B. I went on a bit of a mission to find Johnny B from the small country town and just reach out and reconnect, and, maybe I'd missed something there. Maybe he was the man I was meant to marry. I was so naive. But, I was still convinced in my heart of hearts that that's how life was meant to go.
And I had just happened to pick a couple of frogs along the way to find my prince. Maybe he'd been my prince. Maybe, we'd been too young. Maybe we were meant to reconnect. Oh, my Lord. Anyway, reached out. It turned out that his marriage hadn't lasted terribly long. He had moved back home with his mum, as you do in these little country towns. And he was still quite young. He would have been in his early 20s. So I was 20, maybe 19, 20. And he was like, well, why don't you come up and visit? It'd be really good to catch up. We can hang out. We can catch up with your mutual friends in town. They'd all grown up now, and a couple of them had kids and moved on with their lives. They hadn't got married, but they'd had kids. Anyway, so I did. I had my first car, and I decided my first car that I'd bought, my previous relationship, he had bought me a car. And when I left him with the car. I didn't want anything associated with him. And I got in my little Ford Cortina, 1969 Ford Cortina, little square box it was, and planned out my little trip up to the country. It was a 3-hour drive, and off I went. And I got into town, and I got around to Johnny B's house, and his mum was there, and his mum had always been beautiful. She was a lovely woman. She'd been widowed for a few years at this stage. So it was just the two of them living in this house. And then I, went into town and caught up with the friends that I'd known from when I was growing up and made plans with them to catch up. And I was only up there for a few days, but it was, it was that version of me came back, that country girl version, that freedom, and I was able to leave what I'd gone through behind for a few days and just go back to an innocent time in my life where everything had seemed so simple. And I didn't have any feelings for this guy, which was fine, because I hadn't gone there looking. Well, I kind of had maybe thought that maybe when I saw him again that something would spark, but there was nothing. There was nothing there. He wasn't the same, teenage boy that I had the big crush on. Something had changed in him, and there was an anger just beneath the surface. And I could see it because I had lived with it for 2 years with my previous partner. But to me and to my face, he was this sweet man, and, he was trying to woo me and take me out for dinners. And like I said, it was only a few days. I can't even tell you how long it was because it's quite a distant memory for me, and it's only something that came back to me in the last week while I've been trying to think of other experiences I'd had over the years. Anyway, we went out for dinner one night to this Chinese restaurant in town, and he presented me with this necklace that he bought me. It was a little sapphire with little diamonds around it. It was very pretty, and put it around my neck, and he'd bought me a rose at dinner. Now, staying at his mum's place, I was sleeping in the guest room. We weren't sharing a bedroom or anything because we never had that kind of relationship. And I was, like I said, I wasn't even attracted to him at all because I could see this, that he'd changed. There was just something sinister going on. And his mum had seemed a bit distant when I'd gotten there, and a bit almost apprehensive about me being there. And I couldn't quite work it out. I thought it was me maybe she was uncomfortable having a stranger in the house, even though she'd known me years before. Anyway, we'd gone for a drive after dinner and he'd made all the moves on me, and I'd sort of rejected him and said, not that I wasn't interested in that. And, I just really wanted to reconnect to some part of my teenage years that I felt had slipped away. I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling again, like I do when I get like this, but I'm feeling the anxiety coming up in me while I'm telling this story, because I've never told. Once again, it's a story I've never told. The following day, I went to my country cousin, inverted commas, I'll refer to her as my country cousin, Deb. And I told her about the night before and the dinner, and I was feeling a little bit uncomfortable now because he'd made the moves on me and I didn't really want to be there and I didn't want to give him the wrong impression. And she had invited me to go out with her and her partner and his cousins that night. And I was like, oh, great, that sounds great. That's the great escape. And she said, and you can just come and stay with us for the last couple of days. We don't want you to be uncomfortable or anything while you're staying there. So, and they just lived a couple of streets away in this little country town, as you did. Everyone just lived around the corner. And I'd gone home and Johnny B had gotten home from work, and I could feel this tension in the house, like there'd been some kind of a blow up between him and his mum, which made me even a bit more nervous. And I'm thinking back now, it was more than a few days that I was there, because this had sort of unraveled. So I might have been up there for about 4 or 5 days. And this was probably day 3, maybe 3 or 4. It doesn't matter really, but a lot seemed to happen in a very short space of time. Yeah. Anyway, so I'd gotten back from being in town, seeing my country cousin where she worked at the local bakery, and Johnny B said, well, we're going out for dinner tonight. And I said, well, actually, no, I've made plans to catch up with Deb and her partner and some of their friends. And I think there was a dance or something on. We were going to a dance. That's what they were called back in the day, something at the local hall. And his mum had gone out by this stage. I don't know where she'd gone. It doesn't matter. So it was just him and I at home. And the anger that I had noticed beneath the surface had started to bubble up. And he wasn't happy that I was going to be going out that night without him, because apparently something in his mind felt that because he'd given me this diamond necklace or this sapphire necklace that I was now his, despite me knocking him back the night before and telling him that I didn't have feelings for him and that, I really just sort of hoped to come up there and reconnect with my friends in the country. And I'd just come out of something pretty horrendous and I just needed some of that innocence back. Probably didn't use those words at the time because I probably didn't realise that's what I was doing. But, I said, no, well, I really want to go out with Deb and her bloke, and I'll probably stay over there tonight. And I could feel this anger coming out of him, and it terrified me because I'd lived with it for 2 years, or being in that sort of relationship previously. So I knew something was coming and I needed to get out of the house ASAP. So I'd gone to the phone and rung Deb and said, sort of quietly, because in these days there was no mobile phones. It was a house phone. So I had to use his house phone, his mum's house phone. and Mum had gone out. So it was just he and I in the house, and I was feeling really quite anxious and nervous at this stage. Anyway, I'd rung Deb and said, Johnny B's been a bit weird, and he's a bit angry that I'm coming out with you guys tonight, and I just really want to get out of here. And she was like, well, just grab your bag and we'll come and get you. And I said, well, no, because I have my car there. I said, I'll drive around. I'll come around to you. And she said, all right, well, if you're sure. She said, if you have any problems, just call us. Anyway, I went back into my room, the guest room, and packed up my bag. And I went back out to the lounge room and said to him, look, I think under the circumstances, I'm going to go and spend the last couple of nights here with Deb and her bloke. And, I'm really sorry if you got the wrong impression. That's not what my aim was. I really just sort of came up here because I needed to get away from Melbourne and, kind of reconnect with you guys up here. He wasn't happy with that answer, or wasn't happy with that statement that I was going to spend the last couple of nights away from him. And he started to go off. He started to yell at me and, call me names and all sorts of things. Anyway, I'd gone into the bathroom and shut the door to try and sort of get myself together and get away from him, away from the anger that was coming out of him. And I was standing there at the basin, brushing my teeth and getting ready to go out. And next thing, he kicked the door open and he was carrying a shotgun, a rifle. I don't know what guns are. I don't know. It was one of those long ones. And I screamed and he was yelling at me and telling me I wasn't going anywhere and that I was his and that I had to stay with him and that he would do anything to keep me there. In just a few days, this situation had escalated to this. I couldn't understand what was going on. I was, look, I can just say shocked is an understatement. And I remember jumping into the bathtub and pulling the shower curtain around me and just screaming at him to, just let me go, just let me get out of here. I'm sorry if I've done something wrong. I didn't mean to upset you. Please just let me go. And the next thing I hear is the most sinister laugh coming out of this man. Man, he didn't even look like a man at this stage. He just looked like a crazy person. But just this laugh happening. And he pulled the shower curtain back and he put the rifle, shotgun, whatever it was, down by his side. And he said, God, he goes, you're an idiot. Did you think I was going to hurt you? And this had obviously gone on for a while now because I can't tell you what time frame it was over, but it was enough that my cousin Deb had started to ring the house because she'd gotten worried that I hadn't gotten around there. And she was ringing. And he finally walked out of the bathroom and picked up the phone. And he said, I can't actually remember what he said, but something along the lines of that I wasn't coming out with them. And I screamed out from the bathroom, Deb, I need you, Deb. I'm in trouble. I can't remember what I screamed out, but she obviously heard the terror in my voice. And the next thing I know, 2 carloads of blokes pull up out the front. Deb and her bloke and his cousins. And there was a lot of back and forth going on. And I really can't, I don't know if I blocked a lot of this, the terror that I felt. But I somehow eventually got out of there. There might have been some other guns pulled from the blokes that had turned up from their cars. Like, it was crazy town. It was like a movie. When I look at it, like in my mind's eye, I see it and it's like it was like a movie, but I was in it. And I've never been so terrified in my life. And I had been at the end of some pretty horrible stuff the last couple of years, but nothing like this. Nothing like this had ever happened to me. And I can probably hasn't happened to many people. Anyway, I got out of there, got around to Deb's, got in the car and went around to Deb's. So my car was still at his house. And sometime in the next day or so, I rang the house to try and work out a way to get my car back because I was terrified. I didn't want to go back there and get my car, and I didn't want any of the guys to go and pick it up because I didn't know what was going to happen. So I managed to get his mother on the phone. She answered the phone. He must have been at work. Must have been a work day. And I managed to get, thank God his mum had answered, and I was in tears, and I told her what had happened, and she was in tears, and she'd apologized to me. And I'm like, why are you apologizing? She said, I should have warned you. Unbeknownst to me, Johnny B's father had suffered mental illness and had this violent streak in him. And it appeared that his son had inherited it. And his mother said to me, the reason that I was so nervous when you came to stay was because this is why his marriage broke up, because he had become violent against his wife. And she said, and he's been living with me since the marriage broke up. And she said, and I've been living with this temper. And she had also lived through it with his father. So she'd said to me, come and get the car. You can come and get the car. I'm here. I won't go anywhere. And I can, somehow contain him, I think were sort of the words that she was trying to say to me. So I got Deb's partner to drive me back around to the house. And I'd asked him to stay outside in the car. I said, just, don't go anywhere, just stay there just in case there's any trouble. And I went in and got my keys and what was left of my belongings, because when I'd left my bag of clothes and stuff still there. I'd literally just run out the door. And his mum was there, and they were standing at the back door, and his mum he was, look at this look on his face, this smirk on his face, evil grin on his face. And I can see him now. I can see him and his mum standing there at the back door. So back in the house, you used to go in through the driveway was sort of at the back of the house. The garage was behind the house, and you used to go up through you'd drive in that way, and I'd driven into the backyard of the house. And I ran inside and got my bag and got my car keys, and I'd come out and tried to start my car. My car wouldn't start. And I'm like, what the hell? I just want to get out of here. And I got out of the car and he was laughing. This horrible, scary, evil laugh. And his mum saying, John, what have you done to the car? What have you done to the car? Let the girl go home. Just let the girl go. And he pulled out. Now, I don't know anything about cars, but it looked like what they called a carburetor. Carburetor? I don't know. Anyway, he'd taken the carburetor out. It was this round thing with little tubes coming out of it. And he pulled that out from behind his back and held it up and said, you'll need this to get going. And by this stage, I'm in tears. His mother's in tears. She's yelling at him, just let the girl go. Anyway, he eventually put the car back together. I don't even know time frame this stage, and it's irrelevant. Really, it's irrelevant because when you're in something like that, it's everything's on a go slow. And Deb's partner was still sitting out in the street in his car, and I'd heard the car door open and close, and he'd started to walk up the driveway. And I just yelled at him, I said, it's all right, everything's all right, everything's all right. And by this stage, Johnny B was under the bonnet of my car, fixing whatever he'd taken apart to stop me leaving. And I got out of there. And I can't even remember what happened the next few days, but I know when I drove back to Melbourne, it felt like the longest drive I'd ever been on in my life. Not to mention I took all the wrong turns and got extremely lost, and I wasn't great at reading a Melways. But I never told anybody what had happened. So the only people that knew what had happened was those that were there. So I was able to come back to my life in Melbourne and just be another version of myself again. There was a part of me that I was able to shut that door on that life. And I never went back to that town again. I never went back to see those people again. And I probably, I got in touch. I reached out to Deb a few years back through Facebook. And she doesn't have a lot of memory about those days. She's done it tough over the years. But I never talked about it again. And that was another part of my life that I was able to just shut down. Another memory that I was able to just sweep under the carpet. But unfortunately, it didn't stop there. That story stopped there. Those people stopped there. But my little path of destruction continued. So, as I said at the beginning of the episode, I've struggled this week about what to talk about. And the more I remembered this event, the harder it came for me to sit down and do this episode today. And I've procrastinated. And I'll probably process it over the next week or so. To work out what a role it played in my life going forward. And it would have been a big role. But because some part of me was able to shut that memory down and I was able to leave that version of me in that town on that day and never go back. I was able to just get on with things. And because I never told anybody, I didn't even tell my mum. And I certainly didn't tell my brothers. I had one brother that was the policeman and my eldest brother who would have probably killed the bloke. But I was able to shut the door on that and walk away somehow and keep that secret deep, deep, deep down inside me. Because, on some level, I believe now very much so that we create our own reality. And I know that's a hard one to grasp for some people. And some part of me created that experience. I don't even know how to put it into words, but there was some part of me that felt so unworthy, unlovable, I don't even know. I still struggle to grasp what was going on in my mind at the time, that I thought that I still had that naivety in me, that I thought that that little boy, that young boy that I fell in love with at the school, was still going to be there, 5 years later, 6 years later. It was a little summer crush, but I still had this innocence inside of me that I thought that's what life was meant to be like, that maybe I'd missed something by not pursuing that. That's how desperate I was to find that love, that I somehow walked into that situation not realizing that there'd been a good 6 years in between, probably a bit longer, and that people change. And I didn't know that there had been that history there. And of course, he wasn't going to let on to me when I reached out and made contact about coming up to, spend some time with him and my cousin. And what guy is going to tell you that that's why his marriage broke up? But I sensed it. I had felt that evil beneath the surface, and I had felt that evil in my previous relationship. I had seen that flash in the eyes before when someone's about to hurt you. But he was able to mask it for a couple of days. But it certainly taught me to trust my gut instinct a bit better as I went on. Not to say that I did. There was occasions that I am yet to talk about. But once again, I decided to ignore the signs because somewhere deep inside of me, I believed that life was meant to be beautiful and that evil didn't exist, despite having experienced it firsthand on a few occasions. Anyway, I'm going to leave today's episode there. And thank you all again for listening, because this is a process for me too. This is not just for entertainment for me. This whole being able to share my stories in my life with you all. And those of you who are still listening, those of you who don't think I'm completely bonkers and have gone running for the hills yet, I hope that somebody hears this one day and knows that it's okay to talk about it. And fuck me, it hurts. It hurts when it's coming out. It's, there's still now, after everything I've been through in my life, I still see the beauty in it. I still see the beauty in life, and I still see the innocence in life. And I still see the love in people. And I still trust people. And sometimes that backfires on me. But I've never lost that ability to see a person for who they really are and not for how they behave. I've always been able to find the kindness in people. In my own mind, I still look for the good in people, even the ones that have done some god awful things to me over the years. And there are more stories to come. And I say these, I'm telling these stories, and I don't want anyone to think that there weren't some fun moments through my life. I had a lot of fun. I had a shitload of fun. I've had a lot of laughs. I've had a lot of really good times. But there was one key factor through everything that I've lived through and everything that I have experienced. And the key factor was I was just looking for me, I suppose. But I still didn't think I deserved the best in life. And I somehow walked into situations like this with my blinkers on, and on more than one occasion walked away licking my wounds. But I still trusted people. I still gave people a chance. And I still do. Anyway, leaving the episode here now. I have hopefully got a very special guest on next week, my beautiful friend Steph, who will come on and share her story and where she's at. So, I've had guests on the last couple of seasons who share their whiz bang, this is where I was, this is where I am stories, this is what I went through to get to here stories. Sometimes in life, you don't always have the answers. We never have all the answers. Sometimes life is still happening. Actually, always life is still happening. Life never stops happening. And Steph will share with you where she is at now. And she has been through a lot, and she is still working through a lot, and she knows where she wants to be. Life keeps throwing her curveballs. And I want you all to know that that's okay. And it's going to be a great conversation because we have a lot of laughs together, and we quite often find it amusing that how similar we are. Some of our stories. I say to her, she's the 30-year-old version of me. So fingers crossed, Steph can make it on to next week. She's been going to come on a couple of times now, and life has gotten in the way. And yeah, I look forward to that episode and sharing more of these stories with you guys. So thank you again for listening. Once again, I apologize if I've rambled, but you were hearing it in real time, me processing and saying these words out loud, because I've never said them out loud before. I've never told that story out loud before. So you got to hear it raw and real. And things might keep coming back to me now that I've opened that box, but it's out. And that's where it needs to be. I love you guys. Thanks again for listening. Bye.
So thank you for listening to today's podcast. I am so grateful for each and every one of you. To get in touch with me regarding any of my episodes, you will find me on Instagram, Facebook and TikTok at Kath Telford Empowerment Coach. I love you.